My bandwidth is always an issue.
All good and going now.
All right. So we'll get started, and if other people join us, great. So if you missed my spiel a little bit earlier, welcome, glad you're here. Here with my coworker, Rachel, and we have just been using a library that we have found incredibly helpful. So I just want to spend this time today kind of telling you what we've discovered, tell you a little bit about why we're using it and what it is, show you some docs, and then I'm going to show you an app that I built on Code Sandbox, just kind of really quickly to demonstrate how this works. And we'll do a little live coding if we have time, and add in some additional mocks, some additional features, so that you can see how that works. So I'm really excited to share this with you. This is not very formal, but hopefully it will be really helpful and you can code along with us. So the first thing I'm going to do is just sort of tell you the story, to give you the context of where this came from. So I'm going to share my screen because visuals are great. Let's see. I don't want to give away my app too soon, so let's see here. I'm going to share this tab. Okay, so you should be looking at a Kent Dodds article. We were just talking about him earlier. So this is where it all began. One fine day, I'm checking my inbox and I get blog or newsletter updates from Kent Dodds. If you haven't joined his newsletter, I highly recommend it. There's all kinds of helpful suggestions, and he writes a lot. So this landed in my inbox about stop mocking fetch, and has to do with testing, but I was reading along, and you can read it at your leisure. I've already hooked it up to the repo, but I got down to this part about MSW, and he was talking about a mock service worker and being able to mock your API endpoints. Basically, MSW intercepts the API call. So instead of it going to your real API, it goes to your mocks instead. And our particular use case for this had to do with what he said about development right here. So he said, you know, this is helpful for testing, of course, but it's also really helpful during development. Maybe you have endpoints that aren't ready. And that's the situation that Rachel and I found ourselves in, is the backend was going through some changes. We were building out the API at the same time we were developing the front end. And we just really needed a better situation where we're not dependent on the back end, and that we could, you know, just do our work separate from that. So this looked like a really great option for us, and then it would also set us up for testing as well. So I've linked this article on the repo that I'm going to share with you in just a second, so I highly recommend reading this. That's just some background. So we came across this library, the mock service worker. This is the MSW library. If you search for MSW, you will come across the master of social work. So we ended up like accidentally calling it that all the time. It's like our joke now, but just FYI. So mock service worker, and they have great docs, and they will walk you through how to set this up, and we're going to show you in our app in just a second as well. So we implemented this into our code base, and did some troubleshooting and can answer some questions. If you have issues and run across some problems, you know, feel free to contact us after this if you start using it and you do run into some issues. I know that what's hard a lot of times when you're trying to implement something is that the examples are always really simple and they look so easy. And then you go to do it in your complex code base and it's just not the same world. And so we have encountered lots of things. And so let us know if you've got questions, and we may or may not be able to answer them, but we have a lot of at least trial and error experience with this library. So I'm going to take you to our app. And actually, I'm going to first share the repo with you. So I'm going to throw it up in the chat. Are you able to see my repo screen? Making sure I'm sharing all my tabs. Yeah.
Yeah, we can see it.
Wonderful. So I'm going to put this in the chat so I can figure out how to do that. All right. So there's the MSW demo with cats that you can access. And on that README, you'll see a link to the MSW library, the blog post, and then this Code Sandbox app that I built, as well as the cat API that I used to build this.
Excellent API.
It is. It's lots of fun and easy to use. All right, so here's our cute cat app. And it is terrible. I'll just go ahead and say that. I made this in about an hour. Just trying to show something that would demonstrate how this works. And so I'm going to walk through just the code first, and then we can talk about how this all operates. Before I go any further, Rachel, do you have anything to add as far as like context that would be helpful?
Just, you know, if you do look into this, the docs are super helpful. I mean, they do have, you know, we ran into some issues while we were implementing it that we had to work around, which everyone will, but the docs like led us through setting everything up, and that was really great. And just, you know, it's what's so great about the mock service worker is that it works with both REST and GraphQL. So if you're using GraphQL, it has, you know, can help you with that too.
Thank you so much for mentioning that. That is a huge point. So support for both of those things. Widely used library, so pretty safe using it, trying it out. Okay, so just gonna talk you through the code really quickly. So we have got, I'll show you what it's rendering first. Didn't do a whole lot of good React componentizing. Oh, my screen just refreshed. There we go.
That's weird.
So we're just rendering basically some buttons, the headers, the buttons, and then a favorites table at the bottom that I'm not really utilizing a whole lot, but it's just keeping up with the URLs of the cats that we love. And we'll be able to see how we can add in future functionality. So we got our favorites table component and our favorite row. So those are our components that throw in there, and just put them at the bottom of the page to make it simple. On mounts, we're using hooks. We're getting a cat pick on mount, and this is calling our cat API, and this is just our endpoint that we're using for that API. I do want to show you the API client because it's kind of incorporating another thing that I've been playing around with, which is a fetch wrapper. And so I'm going to show you that in just a second. But we get a cat pick as soon as, and it's just a random one. And then when we click another one, then, oh, that's a cute one. Bless him. Then we're getting a new cat pick, and it's just randomly generating that cat from the API. Handling our errors. And then we're also on mount making a call to get our favorites, and this is also from the API. Just made up an ID for myself because I don't have any authentication set up in this app, but that's just gonna filter just the favorites coming from me. And so I can click this heart if I want to favor one. Ooh, that's a super cute one. So I'm gonna say, okay, just have this alert saying that it's added. And then it gets thrown into this table down here at the bottom of the page. Super fancy UI here. So that's how it's working. And so what I want to show you is how the MSW is set up, or what it's doing first, and then how we set it up. And so if I go here to my API client, I'm going to show you the setup here. This is just a fetch wrapper that I'm using. I copied this from our code base and then just modified it slightly. And you can take a look at this at your own time, but it's just a wrapper around just the native JavaScript fetch. And I know that you have to polyfill that if you're using, or if you're trying to support IE, but we're not right now. So we've got this get endpoint. We can provide it with with a specific endpoint. We have our base API here that we're using, and then we just add that in to call that. And so got our basic client wrapper, which wraps fetch. And then we have additional wrappers for additional calls. We've got a get, create, update, and remove, and then a query one that we're not really using for this app. That's something that I just copied over from other code. And then we just export it down here, and then we have access to it in our app, import it in. Get and create are the ones that we're using here. So I just wanted to show you how that works. I'm going to open this up in a new tab, and I want to show you where the mocks come in. So I'm going to open up our inspector here. Oh, being slow. We can see the network tab. What's so great about the mock service worker is that it works the same way that you are used to API calls working. So you can see it in your network tab. So I've got to refresh. Excuse my slow internet. It is loading. There we go. Usually doesn't take this long, but wow.
Be refetching it too many times? Why is it normally have duplicates like that?
That is all just, I don't know what all of that is, because that is not something that I've seen before. So I'm not sure what's going on there. I'll have to look into that. It usually is not that slow. And I don't know what all of these duplicates are, but okay. So we can, so I'm only mocking one call right now. If we look in our console, which will be easier, I do have an out-of-date service worker going on. I'll explain that later, but it's working, so we're just going to go with it. This will not happen to you. It's just a kind of a code sandbox issue of not being able to initialize it the way that you do. But so you can see here it says mocking enabled, and that's how you'll know that you've got everything hooked up right. And I'm mocking one call, which is just that search call, that get cat call. And so it'll show you MSW, and it'll show you what call you're mocking. And then you'll be able to look at the request, the handler itself, and the response. And I love this. So you can see what you requested, and then you can see the response of that. And so it's just going to intercept that call. Let's go back to the app, and I'll show you how that's set up. So in our public directory, when you initialize your mock service worker, it's going to create this service worker file for you, and it's going to populate everything you need, so you don't have to do anything there. I did have to kind of manually copy and paste this in just because I don't know how to access like be able to integrate any kind of CLI commands in Code Sandbox. If you do, let me know. But we created mocks folder, and it'll walk you through this in the documentation. But you'll create your handlers, which are your the way that you're going to handle those mock calls. And there's lots of different ways to kind of go about handling the data piece of this, but for the purposes of this demonstration, I just wanted to just show you just like a basic, if we have a get handler in here, it's going to use that if it, and intercept any call we make to that endpoint. So you can see here that I am mocking our get request to images search. So anytime I'm in development and I make a call to this endpoint, that service worker is going to intercept that call and use the mock data instead. And so I've just provided it with a cat to use, and it's going to send me back a 200 response and the cat that I have mocked to my data. You export your handlers, and it automatically knows where to look because of this file, which it will tell you how to set up in the docs. And you set up your worker, you spread your handlers in there, and it knows how to read that. So the setup is really simple. I can obviously abstract this out a little bit. So when we did this in our application, you know, we separated our handlers out and just spread them and imported them, like exported them from each individual handler file and imported them into the main handlers and spread them there so that you can separate out your logic and your files. But that's like the basic setup of how this works. Obviously, this is not going to help us out a whole lot because we need to be able to generate random cats. But this is a starting place. So you can get a lot more. This is when you would start to add in, you know, maybe you're going to use local storage or session storage, create some JSON files and use those as your mock data, and then use that data with your handlers. So you can set that up any way that you want to. But I just wanted to show you a basic example here. And we're going to mock together the post request. I think that would be a good next step to do. But I want to pause here for a second and make sure that I'm making sense so far with how this is working. All right. Rachel, anything to add at this point?
I don't think so. I mean, I will just reiterate that having the MSW response in the console is super helpful because it's just right there for you. You don't have to worry about, you know, adding in console logs if you don't want to or anything. And it's been really helpful to me because I can just open it up and see what am I supposed to be getting back? Am I getting back the right data? You know, it's right there for me to make sure that everything is correct. And that's just been a huge help because it's right there for you. So.
Yeah. Great. I think maybe instead of mocking the favorites post request, maybe we mock the favorites get request. Actually, we already have a get request. Let's go ahead and mock the post. This is where lots of fun, some live coding, and you could be trying this out on your own, thinking about what that might look like as we do it together. But so you can see the setup here. You're going to provide the endpoint, and then you're going to provide the request, the response, and context here. You're going to return the status you want to return, and you're going to return the data that you want to return. Obviously, you can add in some conditionals in here to, if a certain condition is true, you send back a 404, you send back a 201, you send back different HTTP status codes depending on what you get in your request. So that's a great way to mock the actual functionality of the backend. So let's take a look. I'm going to open up the app here. Oh, and I do want to show you this piece. So this will be explained to you in the docs, in the setup. But notice that we're only doing this in the development environment. So if you're using Create React App, this will point you to the right, like you've got your environment set up. Create React App does that for you. There is a way, one thing that we were playing around with is when you do npm run build, that's going to be a production build. But if you're putting that into a testing environment, a developer environment, then you're not going to have access to your mocks. There is a library that you can use to create a development build. And so I've set that up in our application so that I can put that build in our testing environment and have access to the mocks if that's something that you want to do. Do not recommend not including that conditional, right? You do not want to have your mocks showing up in your production. So that handles that piece of it. This, I'm not sure if it's necessary. It's not supposed to be, but I had some issues when I was setting this up, and sometimes you troubleshoot and you do too many things at once, and I'm not sure what actually made it start working, but then you just don't touch it after that, right? If it's an app like this. So this may not be necessary, but you'll see this in the docs with Start Worker if you need to add in some additional things. Usually this is only necessary if your mock service worker doesn't live where it expects it to live. If you're using a React app, if this is for a React app, then this is going to live in your public folder. And when you run that npx init msw command, you tell it where your public folder is and it puts it in there. So this shouldn't be necessary. All right, so let's attempt to mock our post request. Was console logging a lot of things to figure out and remove that. Okay. So we're going to come in here into our handlers, and I just like to copy and paste this start. Oh, everything is so slow. So we're going to change this to post. And for this particular one, when we add favorites, so this is creating a new favorite. I thought I turned off the auto preview, but I have to fix that. That drives me nuts. There we go. Okay, so we're going to send in our post request, we're going to send it to this endpoint and provide it with, in our request, we're going to give it the image ID and the sub ID. So I'm trying to remember, let's see. So this is just to favorites. And this is the British spelling. I can't tell you how relieved I was when I figured out that that was my problem of why my things weren't working, because I wasn't spelling favorites the British way. That was a fun moment. So since it's a post request, we are going to get back a body. We're getting back the favorites ID with this. I get super nervous live coding, so Rachel, jump in if you see like, no, don't do that.
I will. I'm terrible at live coding, as you know. I'm like, what? I have to do something? I don't know how to do that.
All right, so we're gonna
example.
I'm trying to think. I don't think we send it. Yeah, we send it the image ID and we just get back the favorite ID, which is not the same thing. It's just the ID. So I guess we need to, we'll just send it back. Maybe the same cat ID. Or I could have like, I could set that up as a separate thing, but I don't see a need to do that. So why don't we do, and this is where like, you would probably, add in some conditionals about whether or not you're going to send back a 200 status. But let's see, do I need to do anything else here? So we're sending the request, we're sending back an ID. To get this working, I don't think, let's just try, what am I doing wrong here? Oh no. Oh, commas. Here we go.
There we go.
Commas are great. Close that. The problem is here, it's going to be hard for us to see if this worked or not within here. I think I do need to open it up. I just hate that it's taking so long to load. This is not normal. I think it's my computer. I'm having to use my personal computer for the Zoom calls. All right. Okay, so let's see if we click our, all right. Errors are always good. So it looks like it did do that post request, knocked that post request. Can see what we sent it. Yep, so we sent it the image ID. Why don't we just have it return the image ID? Let's see, what is this? I'm not sure what that one's about, but why don't we just have it return the image ID for right now? Just see how that works.
I think that's fair.
Is that like that? No, it wasn't. What was it? Underscore. So to access, your request, you're going to get the body of your request at request.body. That's pretty self-explanatory. Then we're going to save. And notice we keep getting that same cat because we're mocking that. And I'll turn off the box and see this working in just a second. I don't know what got going on. I must have a crazy loop thing going on that wasn't going on earlier. Of course, when you're live coding, you can't expect anything to really work right. But we did see it mock that post request. So I'm going to disable the service workers and use it without that, so that you can kind of see how this works otherwise, and you can just see that it just makes the regular network calls. So we get random cats, you can add to favorite, and hopefully if I open this up here, maybe it'll go a little faster without the service workers. I want you to see the console, and just kind of all right. Then we can add to favorites. Added. You can see that just regular calls in the network tab without the mock. And so what's really nice is, it looks the same as if you were just making calls to your API, except you're going to see the little gear for the mock, and you'll see in the console, it's nice and color coded. When you've got mocks there, it'll look very different. So very contrived, very simple example, but I wanted to just kind of see how this works. And thinking about the art of possible here, creating your own mock database with JSON files, and then using local storage or session storage to just isolate all of your calls into your handlers, separate your handlers into different files, and then all you have to do is, when you want to run it in production, you can just disable that service worker and try out the real APIs. And then of course, when you build this for production, you're not going to have to worry about those mocks showing up in production. So great way to develop. Rachel and I hope to do a talk once we add in our tests and kind of use the mock service worker with testing to kind of show you that piece. We haven't gotten there yet, but we're excited about that. Demo was not as smooth as I wanted it to be, but hopefully you got the point across, and I hope to, just looking at this code, you can kind of see what the fetch wrapper and just how the handlers work. So you can get an idea of how this works. What questions do you have? Or maybe you have a mock service that you use that you really like, and you want to know, like, what's the difference with the MSW and your service, and maybe you have some experience using different mock services. And so please share if you've got some insight or questions about this topic.
You mentioned you were using a library to change the, basically to be able to do mock service workers on your test environment. So are y'all running like some integration tests against that? What is, can you explain that setup a little more?
So you're talking about, so we have a hosted environment that we just use internally development. And so I build that and put it up on that server. And so I wanted it to be able to use the mocks. Otherwise, especially because our production API was not, our API wasn't finished yet. And so we use that for just demo purposes when we finish a sprint and we want to show the functionality and show what we built. We wanted to be able to use our mocks in that environment. Otherwise, they just work locally. So I don't have that up on this computer. I'll look for that library. It was really simple. And then I just added that into my NPM scripts. So instead of running NPM run build, I made a script for NPM build dev, something like that, so that I could build the development environment and host it, if that makes sense. Because otherwise, if you do npm run build, it's a production build.
Do you have any examples of tests for this stuff?
Not yet. Coming soon. That's what we're working on building right now. But there are great examples in that Ken Dodd's article, and I think that he even built a demo or a sample app where he uses MSW and tests. So check him out for that.
Perfect.
Yeah. Anybody using a mock service? To mock their API?
Not currently, but can definitely see where it would be useful.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the project I'm working on, we have a HTTP client that we're mocking for development. So one of the things I think he talked about, but not the good thing according to him. So.
So that you said that according to who? Who were you talking about?
Kinsey Dodds. I looked at that article just now, and he
Gotcha.
like one of the first things in the sentence was like, "So you could just have an HTTP client and mock that, but we shouldn't do that for these reasons." And I was like, "Oh, okay."
Yeah. So this is a great alternative. And then I was thinking, even like throwing up a quick just demo of something if you don't want to like deal with. I mean, because one of the problems, like before endpoints are ready, I can always use local storage and do all that, but I would rather isolate that into a handler that I can just turn on and turn off versus having all this extra logic mixed in.
Right, especially if you're writing it with tests and stuff, you can write the handler as a test and then use it for the actual demo too.
Yes. Yeah. So it's been really helpful. I'd love to keep building on this app and add more functionality so you can see how this works. And we're still learning too, but we implemented just some session storage logic so that it updates the UI, and it's worked really well for us.
I don't know if you guys have looked into it at all, but have you noticed any kind of performance difference putting it on a service worker versus just the Fetch API?
I have not.
I haven't, no.
Although, as we just saw, there's some weird things going on when I was using the mocks in this code sandbox, but I have not experienced that when we've used this in our own app. Now, of course, there are going to be performance implications, when you're using a database and you can get exactly what you want back versus having to go through your JSON and find things. But other than that, no.
And another thing with it is that when you're setting up your mock service worker in the index, you can always add scope to it. So you can just say, I only want to mock these specific endpoints and not these others. And it'll only mock when it goes to those, which is really helpful.
Yes, thank you very much for saying that. So you can, define the scope. There's lots of, configuration you can do with that. I hope you've enjoyed watching this cat jump into this box. I just realized it was there over and over and over again.
I've enjoyed it.
Yeah. Doesn't look like, there it is. Oh, that was cute.
That was cute.
Yeah. Other comments, questions about this?
Thank you.
Yeah.
We've got $25 left. So I need emails from Ham, Hunter, Horton, Jason Pike. And if one person that's not those want to ask a question, I've got Uber Eats for you.
Or better yet, what are you playing around with in React, or what have you learned about recently that you're kind of just curious about? Maybe somebody here has played around with it or has some insight.
Nothing fun going on over here. Just lots of enterprisey legacy code and old React trying to make it work.
Yeah. We're fortunate to get to play around with things. Small code base and small team, but some things that we are playing around with. We're about to do some GraphQL, which I'm really excited about. So as a front-end team, I'm going to kind of divert away from that and then come back. But we all joined Egghead.io. Love it. It's been a great resource for us. So what we're doing once a month is picking a course to go through and then talk about together. Kesey's, I know you all do book clubs and things like that. And it's been really helpful for us. So the first one that we went through was Kent's React for Beginners. And I've been coding React for over 2 years and still learned so much in that course, just things that, I'd gotten behind on or just hadn't paid attention to before, especially I'm pretty self-taught in React. And Rachel was saying the same thing, just things that you might overlook along the way or never come across. It was really helpful, and we had a great conversation about that. Lots of just like hidden gems too. Anytime you watch somebody code, you're going to pick up on things that you're like, didn't think about doing that before. And Kent especially, I read an article of his recently where it's just things I don't remember what it's called, something about like things you may not know about JavaScript. And blew my mind, some of the things I didn't know about JavaScript.
Right.
So just kind of seeing some of those things and then just learning a little bit more about the behind the scenes with React, about how it renders and the flow, especially with use effects, and understanding, what happens first and when. And if you're just trying to experiment with hooks or learning hooks, that's a great resource to just kind of understand how it all works. And the more we understand behind the scenes, the more we can make smarter choices when we build our apps. So highly recommend that one. And then there's one on GraphQL that we're about to dive into and go through together. Anybody played around with React Relay by any chance?
Jennifer, what is the name of the course or the one that you're talking about?
Ask that again.
What's the name of the resource that you were talking about?
It is called Egghead. So I'm going to put the link up. We really like Egghead because the courses are curated. So you're not, unlike Udemy or some of these other sort of course learning sites, they're really particular about who can have a course on this site. And so it's the best of the best. And these courses are really well done, and the resources that come along with them are great. So this is Egghead. I'll put this in the chat.
And they have a giant library of different things. So it's excellent because you can go in there and learn about a language, or you can go in there and learn about Git, or you can go in there and learn about Chrome and iOS. It has lots of different topics and a lot of different courses within each of those topics.
Yeah, let's see, just pull up the topics since I'm still sharing my screen. All kinds of stuff. They have a lot of AWS courses now too. And they also, Egghead does Egghead Talks as well, like live talks that you can join in. Real developers all around the world just talking about what's on their mind, what they're working on. Those have been great. So love Egghead, supporting them. They have podcasts. Sure.
I start a new job on October 1st, and so this will be my first experience with React. My shop is going to be using React. And I come from a full stack developer. I've got plenty of JavaScript. I've even done an Angular app. I hear React is a different animal altogether. But and your answer may be the same on this one. But what's the best place to start for kind of learning the basics of React?
I love that React for Beginners course. That is fantastic. And especially for you, because you're not coming to this with no experience coding or no experience with JavaScript. You're coming to it just learning React. And if you were, anybody out there that's coming to this brand new to JavaScript, you might need a lot of JavaScript before you get to that course. But I highly recommend that one. He does a great job explaining how it works. And I feel like he's really coming from the perspective of, here's what we used to do. Here's some vanilla JavaScript. Here's how we, render the DOM and things like that. Here's what React does. And here's the layer that React provides. So it helps you really understand how it works.
Is
React
that
and React DOM.
Is that the Kent Dodd course?
It is.
Okay.
So I'll actually pull that one up too. Beginner's Guide to React.
There you go.
So Jennifer, I have a question
That
for
on
you.
the,
Thank you.
sure. You're welcome, Jenny. Thanks.
Does Ken explain why it's not a good idea to mock the HTTP client?
Yes, he does. Can't recite that, but it's in here somewhere. I think Hunter said that he was reading that just a second ago.
Yeah, I think it was in that list. There was a numbered list, and I think it was like the third one.
Yeah, Hunter just said, oh, it's not a good idea.
Or no, it's the first one. We can mock the client.
Yeah.
Okay.
So check out that article for
Yes,
a little bit more. Other comments, questions, resources for Johnny or anybody else learning React?
I'll say that I came from a Angular 4 plus, I guess 2 plus really, but from Angular 2, it's not too bad. So I don't think you'll have too much trouble. It's skinning a cat 2 different ways, but it's pretty much the same cat.
Gotcha. Cool.
And then anybody new to just JavaScript or front end, React is just JavaScript. The deeper your JavaScript knowledge, the better for any of these front end frameworks, because they're going to come and go. But hopefully JavaScript, I think JavaScript's here to stay for a while. They've come a long way.
I think one of my, when I first went into Angular, one of my struggles was I came from a C# background, so the naming conventions as far as industry standards go are a little bit different between what Angular was calling for and what C# did. And so I quickly broke a lot of things without realizing it. So, but that's how
We actually use TypeScript, and you can get kind of some of both worlds there. I love my compile time, or my compilers as a basically linter for JavaScript, right?
Transpiler, how dare you?
Yeah, you're right.
That would be a great talk as well. Something Rachel and I are about to embark on at Quantalytix too, is moving to TypeScript, and we're really pumped about it and scared. But
Yes.
Only be happy. It'll surface all your typing bugs that you didn't know you had.
yeah. Looking forward to that. So speaking of talks, that's a good one. Another option for us as a group, watching a course and talking about it. So if I don't hear from anybody that wants to do a talk, I'll probably suggest that we all watch the React for Beginners and then come together and just talk about what we learned and flesh out some just questions about React and chat about that. I think that could be really productive and helpful no matter where you are in your journey. There's always more to learn, and then those of you who are more experienced in React can chime in and share your wisdom.
that sounds like a great idea. I'm in.
All right. Cool. Well, look out for that announcement. And if anybody has, a talk that you have come across that you're like, this is awesome, let's watch this together